We start in Germany's Bavaria in the mid-1800s, as the newly bi-generated Punjabi Rani bird from last epi soon sets about turning kiddies into ducks whilst nicking their newborn brother, given he's the seventh son of a seventh son and therefore imbued with magical luck powers because reasons. As she then uses her own powers of magical halitosis to transmorph an exhausted new mother into fucking petals and the dopey useless dad into an owl for shits and giggles. And before you can say, I thought Time Lords were masters of science, so why are they now casting spells like Harry Potter rejects all of a sudden? We cut to London in 2025, and you know it's current day UK because there's zero white fuckers on a BBC programme. Before that Conrad fella from a few epis back suddenly appears on TV, and wishes them all a pleasant morning or some shit. After the opening titles, said Conrad fella starts reading a Harry Potter style story about Doctor Who in a condescending CBeebies type storytime show. But instead of super handsome hunks of man meats like Tom Hardy or Chris Evans, he's just some far right Nazi fascist bigot guy who can't even stand up to his own mum.
Pathetic.
Anyway, after the Doc and his Bombay wife play happy families with their phony fakey daughter Poppy and also deal with mugs smashing all over their gaff, Ruby Sunday turns up on his doorstep and asks if he's actually the first gay black Disney doc who can't stop blubbering. But he just says no chance, love, because my name's John Smith, and I wouldn't be seen dead in a show like that that's got record low ratings and is now just pure propagandic slop for low IQ Reddit tards, so shut up about it already. So this John Smith chappie heads out to work in this upside down bizarro world, but first stops to excitedly chat to the local ginger about how it's just one more day till May 24th, 2025, and also appreciate the giant monster skeletons currently roaming across the skies and shit.
Weird.
Finally arriving at work, Dr. John Who secretly advises his mate Ibrahim how to woo their stunning and brave boss lady Kate with a cheeky Chinese, given it's her favourite dish. But somehow almost gets fired for casually complimenting his colleague on his good looks.
But she's way out of my league. Oh, she's not. You're a beautiful man. Was that supposed to mean? No.
Cause being a raging homo in this world of authoritarian orthodoxy and based AF heteronormative social standards just ain't fucking on, son. Luckily, he's saved by the destruction of another smashed up mug before being amazed by Pakistani poppins passing by in the sky, and almost gets fired again when he wonders out loud who she is and presumably why the Beeb felt the need to race change yet another classic character, but luckily just wets his knickers and desperately scrambles to talk his way out of it and stuff. Elsewhere, Conrad continues publicly telling the backstory and general lore of Doctor Who and how his companions always tend to end up leaving him and stuff, whilst Bombay Belle welcomes her mum and auntie round and just can't believe not one of these poppadom munchers can remember her giving birth to this random African child currently plonked at the end of the table. And more worryingly, neither can she.
Oh shit, not good.
So after another bloody mug gets smashed up, they just shrug and say she must have gone full Angelina and ordered her from the Amazon on Amazon or some shit. So let's just bloody shut up about it already, because we're running out of crockery here, girls.
No!
Meanwhile, up in her aerial lair, Mrs. Flood, aka the phony fakey Punjabi Rani bird, is feeling pretty fed up of her younger Asian clone bossing her about and relegating her to making ham sarnies for the local straight white male who's locked up in their spare bedroom and who is an alt-right villain, and thus of course directly linked in the show to the works of J.K. Rowling.
Really?
And poor Conrad worries he might not be doing as good a job at running the country as all the old official British governments, given everyone is safe, happy and not getting harassed by Romanian pickpockets or having to dodge Somali boat blokes and stuff. But he's mainly just happy to finally now have a mother figure who doesn't smack him about for once.
Aww.
Because turns out he's using the wish powers of that giggling baby, what was stolen in the opening scenes, to remake the world into his long-desired utopia where no one's insufferably gay anymore and there's finally a straight white male on TV again.
Now that's what I'm talking about!
Later, Ruby gets a little sick of there being only one channel on TV constantly blaring all over the public airwaves, and soon runs into that raspberry ripple bird with the floppy legs, and to eventually recognise each other, but not quite sure from where. And before you can say, is it from that piss poor BBC show currently using the Doctor Who IP as a skin suit to push gay race communism and far left propaganda on the masses, Shirley Two Wheels takes her new BFF back to a camp of invalids, what's full of disabled peeps, including ear disabled, eye disabled, and even acting talent disabled.
Yes, because being blind gives you magical powers.
Alright.
No!
And these lots soon subject her to a struggle session, whining on about how they can all see the true world, given they're all misfits who don't belong as it is. So that then means they can better see through the lives of this fake realm and stuff, because reasons. And so can Ruby Sunday, given she already lived through a phony fakey alt-reality world last season when the doc abandoned her arse and she had to grow up and live a normal life whilst facing off against yet another far-right political nationalist who had the sheer audacity to be straight, white and male.
Comrade Clark is a monster.
Anyway, they say they have a plan to totally take down that spice-munching Mary Poppins cosplayer, whilst Dr. Smith just takes a leaf out of my Uncle Dave's book and is busy drinking himself into an early grave in front of the telly box. When suddenly, his ex-homosexual lover boy from last season comes on screen and ominously warns him about how, quote, tables don't do that, bro, whilst also declaring he loves him despite spending less than a few hours with this random Rwandan Scot last year.
What?
And a little later, Belly Bell Bell comes down in the dead of night to find her nutter of a hubby smashing up some more kitchenware, because he reckons there must be some other explanation to the mug smashing around every 5 minutes, especially after his ex-batty boy told him tables indeed don't do that, and totally ain't the reason he's currently going bankrupt having to reorder boxes of ceramic cups every week. Because weirdly, said cups only seem to break whenever he's having doubts and uncertainties, which more than likely means that their entire drinkware cupboards will be totally empty if India Willoughby ever pops in for a brew.
I am a real woman, okay?
But unfortunately, Bombay Bell just can't believe he's just admitted to seeing an ex-boyfriend on the telly box, and thus he's actually a deceitful gay man lying to her about his sexuality for years, and has even shamelessly based their whole marriage on a lie. So probably goes full Soviet, and reports her own family member to the Stasi, well given he's also, quote, having doubts, before getting a satisfying dose of instant karma and getting herself arrested by Mrs. Flood, also for having doubts.
That's what you get. That's what you fucking get, bitch.
Meanwhile, Ruby and her four-wheeled friends with one working pair of legs between them find a random iPad somehow left over from the real world, and promptly trace Conrad's broadcasting signal to the top of the spider skeleton HQ, and totally plan to jam said signal to lure him outside, where Rubes will then be able to remember the real world in full, and totally bollock him for leading her on for an entire year, only to laugh in her face and humiliate her all over social media. Or some shit. Once reunited above, the Doc and Bombay Bell are confronted by Punjabi Rani Prime, as she promptly tries to make him doubt his fictitious life completely by reminding him all about how he used to be a straight white bloke for a few thousand years, before growing a pair of tits and ruining a perfectly good sci-fi show that until then had managed to coast on pure goodwill of the fans for 50 plus years. Because turns out her devious plan hinges on the power of a Time Lord's doubt, given some BS about it being able to crack open the false world and thus rip open the structure of reality itself. And before you can say, well, can't she just use her own Time Lordy doubt already? She says she's in fact trying to find something called the Underverse and resurrect an ancient Time Lord god who was last seen on screen in an old 1980s epi. And that's actually why she blocked off the Doc's access to Earth and made him piss around gallivanting around the universe, charging up his Vindicator contraption. Because that's in fact just a tool to boost a Wish Baby's wishy powers and stuff. Keeping up yet? Anyway, the whole city soon starts to crumble and collapse, given Labour are now in charge. I mean, given an illegal immigrant has trafficked a child from Germany to London and is currently profiting from its labour to make a literal better world for herself. And the Doc just can't believe she's trying to release the OG Time Lord called Omega, who debuted in the 1970s through Doctor Special, and that this is now the second series in a row that hinges on the audience recognising the significance of a villain not properly seen on screen for more than 4 decades, nor that she's just locked him outside on a small balcony and then lobbed him off the side like yesterday's trash. As the fake world soon melts down all around our heroes, and also the local ginger. And the poor Doc is just left screaming and blubbering as the clock soon strikes midnight. Which probably ain't a good thing, given the last time a black man fell from the London skyline, he ruined some poor fella's garden by exploding into frozen chunks after stupidly crawling into the fuselage of an airplane and shit.
Damn!
And that's it. That's the penultimate epi. Though my favourite part, well, aside of course from the irony of the leftist writers creating a fake authoritarian dystopia to mock and criticise the far right, well given this nightmare is considered a perfect reality by a right-wing grifter, but then only to go and present it as neat, clean, happy and safe to walk around in without getting stabbed, raped or acid attacked, was RTD the retardeed shamelessly recycling even more of his old content. Because I guess redoing Midnight wasn't enough this series, given he's now lazily redone the season 3 finale 2-parter, The Sound of Drums and The Last of the Time Lords, where both stories got started in the previous episode and featured a mysterious character being revealed to be an old Time Lord nemesis, included the whole Britain under fascism angle and with the Doctor incapacitated by the villain for the majority of the third act, and even both featuring a sequence in which a Gallifreyan foe taunts our hero with a high camp dancing sequence in a room hovering high above the sky.
No way!
And once again, if I had a bloody pound for every time the finale story of a series 2 of Doctor Who featured someone cut off as they're about to say I love you to the weepy Time Lord, then I'd have £2 bloody.
Nice.
But anyway, on to the finale. After starting with the opening titles, we catch back up with the first gay black Disney doc and bona fide illegal alien, currently making his way back into London without a passport, until some living Deus Ex Machina bird pops up through a special magic door and totally saves his chocolatey ass. God, that was lucky, or else he might have had to regenerate after only 2 series.
Don't give me hope.
Anyway, the clock soon strikes midnight and the date instantly resets to the morning of May 23rd, 2025. As turns out this Anita Bird is the manager of the Time Hotel from last year's Christmas special epi What No Fucker Watched, and promptly confirms that May 24th never actually arrives because reasons. Well, mainly because Punjabi Rani needs the day to keep repeating itself, so reality thereby gets thinner and thinner, and she could then go find that OG Time Lordy Omega bloke from the equivalent of literal hell.
You must be out of your goddamn mind!
Speaking of, the 2 Ranis are finally locked in on the said Omega bloke's location, whilst the Doc finally realises he now has a little black baby daughter in this phony fakey wish world, also because reasons. And I guess because he couldn't quite keep it in his pants. Dirty boy. And after tossing away his pussy old civilian coat like yesterday's trash and promptly shedding his false identity, the Doctor promptly regains his sense of self and comes downstairs in a skirt after remembering he's a raging homosexual, before bringing Bombay Bell and Little Poppy out of the fake bubble world so they too can regain their memories. And she just can't believe he effectively impregnated her against her will whilst being trapped in a Matrix type false reality, and neither can miserable Little Poppy believe that she now has an Indian mum and also a black father who actually sticks around for a change. Anyway, after returning to his old fake place of work and promptly restoring everyone's memories, including bringing back the local trans black woman of colour, given she was excluded from the perfect utopian world dreamed up by a based AF straight white man the other day, the Doc tells everyone to ignore them giant skeleton monsters currently stomping about around London outside, as the bone beasts are just here to feed on the excess atoms from the 2 sandwich realities. Or some shit, I don't fucking know, or particularly care really. Meanwhile, Conrad fights off the advances of Punjabi Rani Prime, as she just tells him to shut up and uses vague wishy powers to find her chocolatey arch nemesis already, as the Doc soon wakes up all his old friends from the Matrix remotely and gathers them all in Unit HQ, and quickly informs the local ginger that the woman behind all this utterly mental shit is none other than the top totty Rani bird what she faced off with back in the 80s. Well, before she hit the wall and also switched ethnicities. He also says that the reason the kid looks like the other kid from the god-awful Space Babies episode last year is mainly because the BBC is cooked and the casting department are fucking cheap. I mean, because their memories of that random girl has now coalesced into a physical daughter in this world, because reasons.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'm a little lost, but fair enough.
Anyway, speaking of the devil soon summons one, as Mel exchanges hurty words with their naughty arch rival from 40 odd years ago, who promptly reveals that she survived the Time Lord massacre using some fancy teleporting wristwatch.
Oh, come on!
And Ruby just can't believe her mousy little neighbour Mrs. Flood was actually a ruthless alien shapeshifter who was constantly stalking her and her one black mate throughout the course of series 1/14.
Not cool, man. Not cool.
As the Rani reveals that she indeed wants to find Omega in order to be able to use his original untarnished genes to restore their original race. Because turns out there won't be any more Time Lord babies, given she's barren and the Doc loves cock. And that's also why bi-generation is now a thing apparently, given the Time Lord genome is trying to desperately reproduce itself or some shit. And it's definitely not just a lazy nonsensical plot device for the writers to shoehorn in 2 doctors at once just to chase a ratings boost, lol, trust me bro. But anyway, he naturally vows to stop her at all costs, and says Poppy can probably save him, given she's got Time Lord DNA. And before you can say, oh god, not another super special girl what's the key to everything in a lame-ass sci-fi show, Riley goes and does a hate crime and says the black kid is totally contaminated, given Poppy's mum is human and also a spice muncher and stuff. And said spice muncher quickly realises that if they end this phony fakey wish world, then little Pop Pops and her resting bitch face will totally cease to exist forever.
Oh no, how terrible, that's just awful, how terrible, oh no.
Do it.
But Punjabi Rani Prime has finally had enough, and activates the chrono beam to pull Omega out of the Underverse already, and then sets the Dino Bone monsters on Unit HQ as a distraction.
She is provoking the bone beasts.
And steady. Meanwhile, the Doc takes Belinda to something called a Zero Room, which is designed to quarantine anyone inside from the collapsing realities, and the plan is to put Poppy in there so she doesn't totally fade away into nothing when they finally take down Conrad and reinstate the real world, didn't she? And before you can say nobody puts baby in the corner, but I guess you can go ahead and put her in a box for all eternity, Belle hilariously demands to go in with her, despite him warning that if they fail and die out here, then she'll be locked inside a small 6-foot wide box with a toddler for all eternity. And without even a tablet or iPhone to fob her off with to watch Paw Patrol or that one with a pig named after Eastern ingredients, she'll very quickly end up losing her marbles and doing what every parent wants to do at some point with a ratty bored child who won't shut the fuck up, and wringing the damn thing's neck already.
So good for you, girl. Go on.
So once the show does what it does best and ignores Belinda so much that she's now literally locked away in a box during the main conflict so we don't have to pretend to give this total non-entity anything at all to do, the Doc tells Ruby to go confront Conrad and get a bit of much needed emotional closure already, whilst the Doc heads out and flies off at high speeds through the totally windless skies, given the BBC apparently too cheap to buy a single fucking indoor fan to blow on the close-up shots of the actors on green screen, and then promptly crashes into the Rani's air lair. Meanwhile, Ruby de-radicalises a local far-right fascist Nazi bigot guy, what's so far right he reads Harry Potter books all day, and uses the Wish Baby's wish powers to totally wish him a better life, where I assume he now instead just reads some translit like a good little soy boy, and this time doesn't get smacked up by his own mum.
Damn!
Whilst back upstairs, the Ranis finally summon the Omega fella, but hilariously soon start to regret their life choices when Punjabi Prime is promptly gobbled up good and proper, whilst a non-Punjabi Floody Rani just picks up her kind of sort of sister clone's wristwatch and teleports her the heck out of Dodge already.
Nice.
Now somehow the last man standing, it looks like it's curtains for the first black emotionally incontinent crybaby Doc what can't stop blubbering or calling everyone babes for some reason.
It's not appropriate to call me babes.
But luckily, he weaponises a nearby Vindicator contraption into a shooter, despite the character famously hating guns for 60 plus years, to force the naughty Omega monster back into the pits of hell rather super easily and with it barely being an inconvenience. Ruby then makes a final wish and wishes London was no longer a neat and tidy utopia with no stabbings, violence or trans people, and instead for the city to go back to being the grimy crimey hellhole where everyone's disconnected and thoroughly miserable all the time.
Good job.
Later, they open the Zero Room and find Poppy has totally survived the collapse into the fake world she was born into, and our heroes promptly pawn off the now human Wish Baby onto Ruby's foster parents without even a basic up-to-date background check or grant payment.
What a fucking liberty.
And they just can't believe they've now got another mouth to feed during a cost of living crisis, just because this illegal alien trafficked a minor across state lines and also space and time.
Go!
Also later, the TARDIS trio make plans for having space adventures with their new chocolatey Sprog, before their memories quickly seem to fade, and Ruby soon realises they've now totally forgot about that moody kid, what gives Gladys a run for her money in the miserable bitch department, completely, and just proceed to gaslight her for 20 minutes about how she's totally off her rocker, talking about little black baby girls physically incapable of smiling, as May 24th finally arrives with a strike of midnight. The Doc then says goodbye to Anita, despite her doing fuck all for most of the epi, and after seeing Conrad living his best life, now as a non-racist chef in a small kitchen, the entire bloody room proceeds to fucking gaslight poor Rubes about there never having been a little black baby girl who clearly hated everyone's guts here at all. But she eventually manages to get the Doc to remember his own phony fakey kind of sort of daughter kid and totally goes save her already. Unfortunately though, the only way he can shift reality to get her back into their world is to totally commit Time Lord seppuku and pour all his own life force into the time vortex for some reason. And just says,
Oh man, I like this face.
and before you can say, well, at least that makes one of us, that gormless 13th Doctor, what literally transgender, turns up and says stop pissing about, arrogantly waffling on about how great the first black gay Disney doc was, like a complete millennial narcissist, and bloody get on with dying already. Because I've got to get back to my era of the show and start ruining the IP already, before both you and the other far left Scottish bloke can then finish driving it into the fucking ground in the following seasons.
Look how they massacred my boy.
And before you can say how is Shitika actually better here in these 3 minutes alone than she was in her entire run under Chimballs,
Bruh.
He probably takes orders from some pussy old woman like a riot cuck, and indeed gets on with topping himself by first ejaculating his fluids everywhere and successfully shifting reality, and soon wakes up in the fancy back garden of his mate Bombay Belinda's gaff, who's now freely been given an expensive new house in this new reality and is also the full-time mum of little Poppy, who's now finally cheered up a bit.
It's about damn time. It's about damn time.
Given he's now glowing and thus doing that dying thing, they proceed to say their goodbyes, as Belinda wonders if she'll ever see him again, and says maybe he can come back and visit in a few years when Poppy's all grown up maybe, and totally give her a free house and all. But naturally, he just fobs her off and implies that that's what the UK government is for, and half-heartedly just says, sure, yeah maybe girl. And before you can say, well why don't you just call his bluff and say right I'll stick the kettle on and see you in a few years then, given you have a time machine right fucking there, he just tells them he loves them and heads off out to space, where he goes on and indeed regenerates after only 2 series.
Finally!
And in a shocking twist, what generally not one fucker could have ever seen coming, he transmorphs into a basic white woman for a second time in 7 years.
No way!
A yes fuckity way, because now Miss Billy of the Pipers is totally back, yo. And before you can say, okay, but is Russell T Davies aware that Doctor Who did exist outside of the years 2005 to 2010 for fuck's sake? Turns out the totally not creatively bankrupt RTD has totally not gone full retarded and desperately resorted to a second bout of temporary stunt casting just to chase a ratings bump based in pure nostalgia in under the span of 2 years.
Really? No, not really.
And that's it, that's the epi. Though my favourite part, well aside from all the therapists across the nation having a fucking field day at the sight of an ethnic gay man regenerating back into his ex-girlfriend and seemingly wearing her face as a bloody skin suit, was realising we now no longer have to put up with a raging homosexual prancing around in gay clubs and straight up snogging blokes, whilst thinly disguised as family sci-fi entertainment. Nor with the traditionally stoic heroic doctor fella suddenly bursting into more tears than current day Jordan Peterson every epi.
Let's be honest. I was the best. You sit on a throne of lies.
Though I am left with some questions of course. Like why did they bring OG Susan back just to ignore her plotline completely and still refuse to give her story any closure after 62 years? And why is it still not explained as to why Mrs. Flood could keep bloody breaking the fourth wall all the time and shit? Well, I guess we should just be grateful for small mercies I suppose. And hey, at least the new Doc ain't bloody Tennant again. Though to be fair, Russell now has a chance to do something hilarious and use the half-human Metacrisis Doc from the end of Series 4 to reverse the polarity of the OG casting and have him now become the 16th Doctor's Tennanty companion. And speaking of, where was that pussy old 14 guy who we last saw hanging around Catherine Tate's garden? I mean, where was he in his bloody TARDIS when Earth was constantly blowing up and totally resetting every day for frig's sake? Whatevs. It's current day Disney, so screw thinking and shit. Because they seem to love pulling desperate stunt castings these days, just to try and claw back the core audience that they spent the best part of a decade chasing away.
Not a great plan.
But personally, I just feel sorry for the end-cutted Couture fella, given he's now sandwiched in between the Tennant Piper regenerations like some weird love triangle and raging RTD obsession, and who's now the only Doc never to have fought either the Daleks or Cyber fellas, nor also get decent ratings.
What the fuck?
But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing, so you don't miss the roast of season 3 when it... who am I kidding? This shit is defo cancelled, bro. Well anyway, tell me if you like this shit show in the comments if you have time, and I'll spunk myself to death just to warp reality to live in my preferred bubble world and exactly like a current day Reddit tard with you in the next one.